Yeah, good morning, everyone. And thanks, Ashley, for previous presentation. That was quite really interesting. Um, I It's been quite a very interesting time. So I work as a scientist at Microsoft Research Cambridge, and for the past several years, I've been, working, building AI models and developing AI systems. And I'll say, from personally myself, that I was really surprised and amazed by what ChatGPT could do because it frankly took, the whole of the AI community, by surprise. And it's been today I'm going to like shed a little bit more light on, I use it personally and I've seen other people like use this, both as developers and, as scientists as well. Um, I think one of the interesting things, to mention ahead of time is, how these models keep improving and getting better. And it's previously we could really build AI systems, which I'll call like weak AI systems, and we knew exactly what they could do. Like what they could do was like predefined ahead of time, and then we trained them to do that. And this was like the first time that AI systems will be such that we build them and they can do a lot of things that we didn't think they could do before, and they just keep surprising us all the time. And so this is quite an interesting development. So first off, one of the most amazing things ChatGPT can do is like helping you learn new concepts. And thinking about this as a developer, working as an engineer, working as a scientist, there is a lot of things you typically have to like learn. You could, be working on a new project, which might involve new concepts and new domains that you're not very familiar with. For example, I started as a web developer, then became a mobile developer, and then spent some time doing web development, DevOps before finally switching careers to work as a scientist. So it's been learning new things all the time. And that's always been like really hard and challenging because you have to go through a whole ton of documentation, and sometimes you have to even know where to start from, what syllabus should you use and all of that. And ChatGPT can really help both in terms of like forming syllabuses for you, and also in terms of like actually helping you learn each topic, right? In this case, I asked ChatGPT to teach me vector quantization, which is, a way of turning continuous signals into discrete ones. And this is a technique that's been like highly involved in some recent works in AI in terms of speech and in terms of like images as well. And I was curious about it just to like learn more about it. And it's not only able to like explain what it does, but also gives me like step-by-step code in PyTorch, which is the AI framework that is often used to like build AI models, including ChatGPT itself. And it gives me like step-by-step instructions, implements the code, on actually how to do this. Right. So now not only, and this is like quite long, again, I've pasted just like the beginning of it. And I'm not only able to like see the explanation, but I also see layer by layer, like what's the code, by which I'm able to like understand it both from a code and explanation perspective. And this is like really, really powerful and a very incredible way of like learning new things and implementing them. And if you think about this, let's say you are in a new job, or maybe you are in a new team, which happens all the time, especially in like a big organization like Microsoft. You switch teams frequently, and you then need to like work with new things that you're not like super familiar with. You could use this as a starting point, sort of, not working from a blank slate, like I should mention the other time. Like you have something like you could begin with, and then you could like modify, you could build on top of this, to be able to like maybe implement new solutions or solve new problems that you previously have not solved. That's like just like learning new concepts. Another thing is like generating guides of complex problems. So example here is like I'm trying to like get instructions on how to create a Kubernetes cluster on Microsoft Azure and deploy, some nodes on it. Now, this is a fairly complex task because Kubernetes is like this software infrastructure that powers, many of the high traffic websites in the world. And that's like, a problem that includes like distributed systems and all of that. And people will say like, this is really hard. Kubernetes is typically considered, a very complex system. And to do something like this, typically you need to like go through a lot of documentation, say Azure documentations on Kubernetes websites, documentations from a bunch of places. And that can be really hard because it's one thing to like understand each documentation, right? It's another thing then to be able to like relate concepts from one documentation to the other. And yeah, ChatGPT is able to like, encapsulate all of that into like one single explanation that's coherent with like everything you need to do. And it gives you step-by-step instructions, install these, and gives you the code to actually run on terminals, how to run it. And it's really amazing to be able to do this because when you think about it, sometimes you are, maybe a scientist like researching how to build the next ChatGPT, right? And then for some reason you want to deploy, a web application, right? Which is like not your primary area of expertise because you're not maybe a DevOps person or a web person, you are like a researcher. And then, but you have some basic programming skills. But with something like ChatGPT, you could be able to like actually get instructions on, oh, with my basic programming skills, even though I'm not an expert in this, programming domain, like how can I do this? I can follow these instructions and actually do it, which means, as a developer doing one thing, you can actually use this to augment your skills and do a bunch of new things that, you typically have to like maybe hire a different person to do for you or stuff like that. Again, that brings back into questions of like, jobs and stuff like that. But this can really augment each individual and like make them a lot more experts on domains that might be a lot more complicated for them. Well, so another interesting thing is finding bugs. And software is riddled with bugs all the time. When we install an application and it's crashing, it's not working well, or just when you release a software and there's a vulnerability in it, typically programmers spend days like just trying to debug code, just trying to find bugs in code. And this is one of those things that could, affect productivity the most. But finding bugs is like one of the major jobs that programmers have to spend most of their time doing. And so you can think about, you have like 1,000 lines of code or 50,000 lines of code spread across different files. And then there is this bug somewhere and you don't know where it is. And now you have to be like going through the code line by line, trying to find out what exactly did you maybe misspell, and especially in a language like Python, which could be subject to such things. And ChatGPT, you could just put that entire code into something like ChatGPT, and it's going to identify for you exactly where the bug is. So in this case, I've written a code which I deliberately introduced 2 bugs into, and I just asked ChatGPT to find the bugs in this code. And it's able to identify, first, I'm missing an import statement, and second, I misspelled something. There's a typo, right? And this is really interesting. Like it just identified those 2 bugs instantly. And even with like a lot more complicated code, it can do this. And this is like a really big time saver that could cut, having to spend days trying to find what's wrong with your code to just a minute, literally, or just a few seconds. And so this is quite a very big productivity boost for developers. And furthermore, it's like when you write code, sometimes, depending on your level of expertise, your code could run fine, but might be slow, might not be performance enough. And then when you're like building software that is supposed to like, work for like billions of people, you want your code running really fast because you can think about like every single compute that is wasted on code that is slow could easily turn into millions of dollars in loss because like a code that's supposed to run in 1 second and runs in 2 seconds instead could change your cloud cost from $1 million to $2 million, so to speak. And so code performance is like really important. And even if you're not like a super expert in code optimization, you could use something like ChatGPT to actually rewrite your code to be more performant. So here, I want to like compute a dot product, something we call a dot product, which happens to underlie a lot of this whole, AI code. It's just a multiplication of like two vectors or two matrices. And I particularly wrote a loop to do it here, which is, the most inefficient way to do it. And yeah, I wrote that code to be not so good, but it works. And I asked ChatGPT to like write the code to be more performant. And yeah, it's able to like actually identify for me, for a single function that I'm supposed to use, the dot product function in NumPy, that's going to actually make this, a lot more performance. Now, I might not be aware of this dot products function, which so it's rewritten this code for me to be a lot more optimal. This is the most optimal version of this code it can be. And it's really interesting. While this is just like a very simple case scenario, if you have like a lot more complicated code, which you might not really be clear what you're supposed to do to make it more performant, ChatGPT, with its broad knowledge of coding, can actually help to write your code to be a lot more fast. So yeah. When I've seen this ChatGPT code interpreter, which was recently released, where you could just put in your data, your CSV, JSON, your data sets, and it could do very powerful data analytics on it, just like you will get to data scientists. So yeah, that's pretty much everything that I want to talk about today. Yeah, thank you very much. Any questions? Please, much for